A loud thud jolts the crew as the Platino lurches to starboard. The force snaps the preventer holding the boom, which swings violently across the stern of the boat, knocking a crew member onto the deck, killing him instantly. Platino was a sloop designed by Ron Holland. It had two headsails or jibs in front of the mast, and the mainsail that runs up the mast above the boom. Platino measured 20 meters in length and was built by Yachting Developments around 1997-98 as a recreational sailing yacht. It was originally named Picasso and berthed in Sydney Marina until 2014 when it was sold to new owners, the McHughes from New Zealand. While the sale was being negotiated, it was damaged by a fire on board another boat in the yard, and so it was sold at a reduced price. After the sale, it was brought to its new home port at Gulf Harbour, Auckland, where it underwent an extensive refit with no expense spared and was renamed Platino. The major refit covered the hull, sail, engine, navigation and communication systems and safety equipment. This work included relaminating the fiberglass hull and replacing the deck with new teak wood, so the exterior of the hull looked brand new. The interior spaces with 3 cabins for 6 passengers and the galley were updated. All the sails were replaced. New roller furling systems were installed for the twin head sails, and a hydraulic furling motor was added to the boom for the mainsail. Furlers roll the sails into position and can be operated by one person from the cockpit, making it easy and safe to raise or store sails, or reef them when the weather picks up. Sailors reef a sail by lowering it partially when the wind picks up so that less sail is exposed to the wind. New winches were installed in the cockpit to control and adjust the sails. The main sheet, which is the line connected to the end of the boom to control the mainsail, was originally connected to an arch. The arch was removed and the mainsail was mounted on the coaming or raised border around the cockpit. A preventer pennant was fitted to the boom. A preventer or jibe preventer is there to hold the boom and stop it swinging unexpectedly across the boat. A jibe is when the boat changes direction and the sail moves from one side of the boat to the other while the wind is behind the boat. The preventer pennant they installed was a short line with one end connected to the outer end of the boom and the other end clipped to a point closer to the mast. This allowed the crew to easily set up the preventer by attaching a longer line without having to reach out to the end of the boom. A preventer line is normally turned around a block towards the bow and brought back to a winch in the cockpit. Platino's engine, generators, electronics, navigation, and communication systems were all replaced with the latest models. A new autopilot system was installed. The self-steering gear could hold course without the crew's intervention. The autopilot was a computer-controlled system. The crew type in the course heading and the computer uses a magnetic compass, a gyro compass, wind direction, and GPS location as references to steer. The autopilot controls a hydraulic rudder drive unit to steer the course. Platino was well equipped with life-saving equipment, exceeding the safety certification requirements. It had life jackets with harnesses for every person, including children's sizes, stowed under the companionway steps leading from the cockpit to the saloon. Each adult life jacket had a GPS locator beacon to track someone if they go overboard. The Platino had a recovery module, a rescue sling, a chart plotter with a man overboard GPS signal, 2 EPIRBs or emergency position indicating radio beacons, and carried an 8-person inflatable life raft stowed on the middeck just behind the mast. It was officially relaunched in April 2015, but the refit work continued until December 2015. The total cost of the refit, including the purchase price, amounted to almost $2.5 million. Platino gathered a crew of 5 experienced members, sufficient for an offshore voyage. The yacht's owned by Brent and his wife Victoria McHugh. Victoria, or Tori, is the designated skipper because between them, she has formal sailing qualifications like Master and Coastal Yacht Master certificates and has completed ocean navigation, marine radio, and radar operator courses. And in preparation for Platino's planned offshore adventure, she completes sea survival and marine first aid courses. Tori has 30 years of sailing experience, with 8 years living aboard a yacht traveling 60 to 70,000 nautical miles, sailing around the world. Her husband Brent, or Harry, has no formal training in sailing, but he's an experienced marine electrician. He's been sailing for more than 45 years, including crewing on yachts during races and yacht deliveries. The 3 other crew members are either friends or acquaintances of theirs. Ross McKee, the couple's friend, has started out in rowing. Like Harry, he has no formal sailing qualifications, but he has owned a boat and gained experience as crew on yachts up to 30 meters in length. He's also crewed during races and delivery voyages. The couple also invites Nick Saul to sail with them, the owner of Bryn Wilson Boat Builders, which refitted Platino after the fire damage. Nick's an experienced boat builder who's built and raced his own yacht and sailed as skipper, watch captain, navigator, and crew on board many others, and holds a boatmaster certificate. He's been heavily involved in the New Zealand yacht racing circuits on both local and national levels. The last crew member, Steve Forno, is another friend of the couple. Steve started sailing at a young age and owned his own boats and gained experience by crewing on yachts for deliveries between various international ports. He joined yachting competitions in the Auckland Club racing circuit and on prestigious yacht races like the Coastal Classic, Sydney to Hobart, and the Kenwood Cup. He also holds a boatmaster certificate. In December 2015, right after completing the refit, Platino makes its maiden voyage. McHughes sailed Platino to the Bay of Islands, living aboard for 3 months over the summer of 2015-2016 in the Southern Hemisphere. The winds aren't strong enough to sail Platino, so they motor the yacht from Gulf Harbour to the Bay of Islands. The McHughes are able to sail the yacht only once when the wind picks up for almost 8 hours in the Bay of Islands. In very light wind, they sail Platino back to Gulf Harbour at the end of their trip. They're able to sail for a total of 24 hours during the 3-month trip. With such light winds, they motor sail for a large portion of that voyage. The majority of the steering is done by the autopilot, although the McHughes and some of their guests do take the helm from time to time. After the trip, Platino goes back to the boat builders with a work list of items that need attention. The majority of these are warranty type items like plumbing issues that are easy to see and fix. None of the problems listed are related to safety. The engine's been running well, so they skip the scheduled engine maintenance checks. They don't notice that the hydraulic fluid for the autopilot rudder drive unit has dropped below the normal level because of a leak in the system. The McHughes plan to sail Platino in the cruising division of the Auckland to Fiji race, which covers 1,110 nautical miles offshore, set to start on the 4th of June 2016. Platino has a safety inspection, which is a requirement for any New Zealand registered pleasure vessel departing New Zealand waters. On the 11th of May 2016, the yacht is certified to Category 1 standards by Yachting New Zealand. The Yachting New Zealand inspector is familiar with Platino because he's been involved in its refit. He recommends the McHughes install bilge pumps and additional safety lanyards for the harnesses on board. The yacht and its equipment meets and exceeds the requirements, and the crew are qualified for the voyage. 2 weeks before they depart for Fiji, the McHughes, Steve Forno, Nick Saul, and Ross McKee meet for a practice sail on Platino. The crew haven't sailed together, and so this is an opportunity to get to know each other and to familiarize the crew with how the yacht handles. The McHughes run through the hydraulic roller furlers, the winches, the traveler, which controls the main sheet, and the autopilot system. The crew practice setting and adjusting the twin head sails and mainsail, and they discuss the general operations of the yacht. They spend 3 or 4 hours sailing in light wind in the area between Gulf Harbour and Rangitoto Island. Because the winds are light, they don't set up the preventer or discuss how to set it up. Nor do they discuss safety equipment in detail or practice any emergency procedures. This is just to familiarize themselves with the yacht and get to know each other as sailors. Approaching the 4th of June, the McHughes pull out of the race because the refit is running late and they have some business commitments. The team still plans to go on with the adventure, but at a later date. They reset their departure for Fiji for the 11th of June, which is a good weather window for most of their journey. At 1100 on the 11th of June, the New Zealand Customs clears Platino at Marsden Wharf in Auckland. The wind isn't strong enough to sail, so the McHughes turn on the motor and keep it running throughout the day. They sail a set compass course using the autopilot, and the crew keep a lookout. 4 of the crew agree to a watch rotation, 2 hours on, 6 hours off. While on watch, they record their location and progress in the log and on the charts. Tori McHugh isn't part of the roster, nor is she involved in directly overseeing the sailing of the yacht, even though she is the designated skipper. But she is responsible for the navigation and cooking. Early morning on the 12th of June, a light breeze starts to blow from the southwest, but still isn't strong enough to set sail, so the crew keep the motor running throughout the day. As the wind begins to pick up, they adjust the sails. Based on the forecast, the crew anticipates a stronger wind to arrive later that night, so at nightfall they partially furl the mainsail and the jib. Platino is sailing on a broad reach, meaning the wind is coming from behind and to the left of the yacht on a port tack. Sailing a broad reach means the boom is extended all the way out to catch the wind. The main sheet, which is the line that connects the traveler to the boom, is extended all the way out, and there's very little tension on the line. The wind will hold the sail out, but if it changes direction and catches the sail from the other side, the crew might not have enough time to tension the main sheet and stop the boom crashing from one side of the yacht to the other. The boom is 8.6 meters long and weighs 678 kilos. They don't want to leave it to chance, so the crew sets up the preventer to hold the boom out to starboard, which is the right side of the yacht. This is the first time that the crew, or even the McHughs, have set up Platino's preventer. They unclip the preventer pennant and pass it through a snatch block, which is a pulley attached to a pad eye on the starboard tow rail at roughly the center of the yacht. They tie the end of the pennant to a spare line using a bowline knot to extend the preventer. Tying a knot in a rope can reduce its strength by as much as 70%. The extending line is then passed back to the cockpit where it's tensioned on a winch. The crew on deck agree to the preventer's layout, with the line returning to the cockpit from amidship, but typically sailors extend a preventer line to the bow and back to the cockpit winch. A wider angle between the preventer and the boom is far stronger. As the wind picks up, the crew stops the motor and the yacht sails on autopilot. The crew keep watch and adjust their compass course to keep the wind in roughly the same place relative to the angle of the boat. If the angle of the wind shifts from the left over to the right side, they need to change the sail plan, which for now they would rather avoid. During the night, the wind picks up speed and so do the waves. Platino performs well, keeping the crew comfortable. They enjoy the night sail and watch the sunrise over the ocean. By daybreak on the 13th of June, Platino is 305 nautical miles north-northeast of Cape Renga, the most northerly point of New Zealand. The wind has been blowing at 30 to 35 knots from the south, with gusts up to 48 knots registering on their instruments as they sail downwind on a broad reach. The strong wind has stirred up the sea, producing a 2-meter wave coming from the south. There's also a 3-meter swell coming from a northerly direction. The waves and the swell from opposite directions are meeting and creating rough and unpredictable sea conditions. But it doesn't bother the crew, who are all experienced sailors. As the crew enjoy their breakfast in the cockpit between 09:30 and 10:30, they review how their watches went the night before and discuss their plan for the day. They discuss how their compass course has changed during the night to keep a safe angle to the wind. Instead of heading north, they're now heading northwest. The wind was blowing from the southwest and is now coming from the south. This new heading is taking them in the direction of New Caledonia instead of Fiji. So the crew talk through a plan to get back on course. Later in the day, the wind direction is expected to change and come from the southeast. The crew plan to wait until the wind changes direction and then alter course to a starboard tack, which means the wind will blow from the right side of the yacht and bring them back on course towards Fiji. Platino is sailing with the wind roughly at their back. To change course, they have two options. They have to cross the wind, which means the wind direction changes from the left to the right side of the yacht. When they do that, the sail plan must move from its position on the right side of the yacht to the left. They can either jibe the yacht, which means they keep the wind at their back and turn through the wind, or they can tack through the wind by turning the yacht all the way around and pointing the yacht bow first through the wind. A jibe in strong wind has to be controlled carefully by tightening the main sheet, which is the line that connects the traveler to the boom. If they lose control of the sail and the strong wind catches it, it could crash across the boat, damaging the rigging, or worse, hitting one of the crew. The crew decide to tack, which is a conservative approach and a safer option in winds of 30 to 35 knots. Tacking the yacht takes pressure off the sail and allows the crew to control the boom easily as it moves from one side of the wind to the other. The wind direction is similar to the weather forecasts, but the wind speed is higher than expected. After breakfast, Harry, Ross, and Steve retire below deck, leaving Tori McHugh, the skipper and owner, along with Nick Saul, the boat builder, to stay on deck in the cockpit. The hydraulic rudder drive unit has been losing hydraulic fluid. At around 1100, before they change course, the crew hear a loud thud and a heavy jolt reverberates through Platino as it veers hard to starboard. Tori thinks a rogue wave has hit the boat, but there is no wave. The hydraulic rudder drive has lost pressure, and in an instant, the crew has lost control of the yacht. This sudden change in heading means the yacht crosses the wind in a jibe. The wind is now on the other side of the mainsail, pushing the mainsail toward the back of the boat. The only thing stopping the mainsail from crashing across the deck is the preventer line, which is put under immense pressure from the wind. The bowline knot on the extension line that's tied to the preventer pennant is the weakest point. It gives way, and as the line snaps, the boom swings violently, pulling the preventer pennant out through the snatch block. The tattered bowline knot jams in the snatch block, transferring the force of the swinging boom to the block. The pad eye, where the snatch block is fixed to the tow rail, can't hold the tension and shears off. The preventer fails and the boom swings dangerously across the back of the boat and out to the port side. Without the rudder, the yacht is out of control, and as it changes direction, the boom swings back to the starboard side. The only line holding the boom is the main sheet connected to the traveller assembly. As the boom swings from side to side, the traveller assembly breaks, leaving the boom to swing across the boat, smashing against the rigging holding up the mast on either side. The helm is located behind the cockpit at the stern of the yacht. To reach the helm from the cockpit, Nick has to cross the path of the boom with the snatch block attached to the preventer pennant and the traveller car attached to the main sheet swinging wildly like a wrecking ball. As Nick steps towards the cockpit, the boom with its flailing gear hits him in the head, throwing him out of the cockpit onto the portside deck, killing him instantly. The three crew members below deck hear Tori call for help and rush up on deck. Steve is first out from below. He sees the boom swing and shouts at Tori to duck. As she throws her body to the deck, she glimpses something going overboard on the port side. She sees Steve in the water some distance from the yacht with his arms raised. The yacht continues to sail out of control and away from Steve. Harry and Ross fight their way to the helm at the stern of the yacht. They duck to avoid the swinging boom with its thrashing hardware. Harry reaches the wheel first and tries to steer the yacht, while Ross checks to make sure no lines are in the water which may entangle the propeller. Harry turns the yacht's bow into the wind so they can furl the sails and find Steve, who's gone overboard. But the hydraulics have locked the rudder in its starboard position, making it nearly impossible for Harry to turn the wheel and control the yacht. Harry and Ross together manage to hold the yacht's bow into the wind long enough to furl most of the mainsail. The boom still swings violently across the stern of the yacht as it rolls in the rough seas. A portion of the main sheet hangs from the end of the boom, with the broken traveller car whipping like a wrecking ball. It hits the helm console, smashing the sail's furler controls, which stop the sails from being reduced any further. The damaged helm console blocks the path of the helm wheel, making it even more difficult to turn. Ross uses his legs to push the console away from the wheel and then ties it down. The boom and wrecking ball swings again, smashing the hardtop over the cockpit. It's left hanging by one webbing strap, which Ross cuts, and the hardtop falls overboard and out of the way. The boom and its contraption catches the cockpit table, which is torn from the deck and thrown over the side. Next in the pathway of devastation is the helm. One of the spokes gets splintered into pieces, adding to the already difficult task of turning the wheel. The wrecking ball then hits the guide rails on the starboard side at the rear of the yacht, knocking them down. As the men struggle to control Platino, distracted by the swinging boom, the yacht travels an erratic course, passing Steve twice as he struggles to stay afloat. The crew on board see Steve, but there's little they can do to help. they haven't discussed the safety equipment nor practiced any safety drills. A recovery module with a GPS to throw to a person overboard and a rescue sling that's tethered to the boat are near Harry and Ross, next to the helm. But they're fighting to gain control of the boat and trying to stay out of the way of the boom and its wrecking ball. They're not thinking clearly enough to deploy any of their life-saving devices at the exact moment they spot Steve. Tori goes below deck to raise the alarm and request assistance. She tries to activate the man overboard function on the chart plotter. The man overboard button will accurately mark and record the location of the yacht at the moment the button is pressed. It'll display the distance and direction of the yacht and the time elapsed since it's activated. The accuracy will depend heavily on how quickly the man overboard function is activated and the vessel's speed. In her panic, she doesn't remember that the man overboard button needs to be pressed and held for 3 seconds, and she doesn't double check that it's activated. It's not something they've practiced on a new vessel. Tori makes repeated distress calls on the yacht's radio, but no one answers. She then tries to activate one of the yacht's emergency position indicating radio beacons, or EPIRB, but she can't turn it on. If she can activate one, it'll send a distress signal and coordinates to the emergency services. Ross staggers into the cabin and tries to help her. He can't activate the EPIRB either. It's different from what he's previously used. Tori leaves the EPIRB to Ross and gets the satellite phone. She tries to contact her 2 brothers at 11:05, but neither answer. She checks her contacts, and at the top of the list is the naval architect involved in the design work during Platino's refit. At 11:12, the naval architect answers his phone and learns of Platino's situation. Ross carefully reads and follows the directions on the emergency beacon, and after several minutes, he manages to activate one of the devices. At 11:15, 15 minutes after Steve went overboard, the emergency signal is picked up by the emergency services. At 11:24, the naval architect contacts the Rescue Coordination Centre New Zealand on behalf of Platino. The Rescue Centre informs the Royal New Zealand Air Force, who send an Orion aircraft to search for Platino. At 12:54, 90 minutes after the Rescue Centre receives the distress call, the Orion arrives at the scene of Platino's accident. The aircraft contacts Platino to get the coordinates from the man overboard function on the chart plotter. But the man overboard hasn't been activated, so she gives them the position from memory. The Orion's crew start flying a wagon wheel search pattern with 5 nautical mile radius, but they can't find Steve. The boom continues to swing uncontrollably, and the force strikes the shrouds, making the entire boat shake. At 2000, the backstay, which is the rigging securing the mast at the stern of the boat, breaks, and the mast falls over the port side. For the first time in almost 9 hours, Harry and Ross don't have to duck for cover every time the boom swings its wrecking ball over their heads, and so they go below deck to rest and think about what to do next. While below deck, they hear the rigging knocking and scratching against the hull as the mast is dragged through the water. They need to cut it loose before it breaks through the hull and floods the yacht. They decide to ready the life raft first to make sure they have a way to escape if they can't cut it loose. The 8-person life raft weighs 46 kilograms and is located on top of the cabin behind the mast. Ross slowly slides it down the side deck and secures it in the cockpit. Harry and Ross clip their harnesses to the yacht and slowly make their way to the mast dangling over the side. Working in the dark, Ross holds a torch to light the scene while Harry uses a cordless angle grinder to cut through the stainless steel wires holding the mast to the boat. The wires holding the weight of the mast are under tension, so the men have to be careful to avoid being struck if the wires whip back as they cut through. The men slowly cut the mast free and it falls from the side of the yacht. But the wire rigging at the bow is still attached, and so the mast doesn't sink. Rather, it acts like an anchor on the yacht. It's no longer rubbing against the hull, and so the 2 men decide to just leave it as it is. They make their way back to the cockpit and to the helm. They lash the steering wheel hard over to port, and after a long, hard and traumatic day, Harry, Tori and Ross fall asleep in the saloon, exhausted. During the night, the yacht loses its steering and starts taking on water. The next day, the 14th of June, the crew wake up to a boat that's sinking. They call for help and prepare to abandon Platino. At 1500, a passing container ship, the Southern Lily, responds to Platino's distress call. In rough seas with 3-meter swell, Southern Lily's crew throw lines to Platino and bring the yacht alongside the giant container ship. Platino strikes and bounces off the container ship's hull, causing more damage to the yacht. The crew of the Southern Lily throw ropes to the yacht. Tori, Harry and Ross grab hold and the crew haul them on board the ship. Nick's body is left on board the yacht. They leave Platino adrift with the emergency beacon activated to track its location. Then Southern Lily continues on its course to Auckland. On Wednesday morning, the 15th of June, the Air Force officially calls off the search for the missing crew member. Steve's body is never found. A few days later, authorities locate Platino and tow it to Whangarei, New Zealand by tug. Maritime New Zealand conducted an investigation on the Platino incident. The investigation concluded that the crew weren't familiar with the yacht's equipment and hadn't done any onboard training. They weren't able to effectively use all the equipment available to them. Yachting New Zealand recommended that owners and skippers create a written action plan for dealing with emergencies and ensure that crew are proficient with the stowage and use of all key safety and emergency communication equipment. Crew should conduct emergency drills to simulate the use of safety and emergency communication equipment, or at least discuss them in detail. Ultimately, the skipper has the sole responsibility for the safe operation of the yacht and the protection of its crew. The way I interpret the report is that the skipper of Platino was in name only because of the qualifications and experience that Tori held, but it looks like decisions were made by a committee rather than by the skipper. Decisions like how to rig the preventer were made by the crew, who hadn't rigged a preventer on this boat before. Not to say that the skipper had either, but when asked, she didn't even know how the crew had set it up.